I think in our society, we have this idea that being uncomfortable, we need to fix it immediately. And that's not necessarily what I think is good. It's like, I'm feeling uncomfortable. That doesn't mean anything needs to be fixed. It's like, let's just get curious about why you're feeling uncomfortable.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 73. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a super fun interview with a woman named Whitney Miller.
Yeah, so Whitney is a pretty badass person.
Yes.
She is the former Miss USA 2012. She was also a professional wake surfer, a MMA fighter. She does Jitsu and martial arts, and she's traveled the globe on her own.
Yes.
So kind of lived a lot of lives in a very short 31, 2-ish years, somewhere in there. 30-ish years.
30-ish years. Good job.
So you'll also hear her mention the name Aubrey or Aubrey Marcus once or twice, just so people aren't confused about who that is. She is the fiancé of, or her fiancé is Aubrey Marcus, who is the host of the Aubrey Marcus podcast. So if you want to hear
more... the Aubrey Marcus show, I think.
The Aubrey Marcus show, which is a podcast.
Yes.
My apologies.
It's a pretty well-known show. Check it out.
It is, yeah. Lots of great information. We listen to it.
And that's actually how we found Whitney.
Yep. So if you want to hear more from her after this, you can definitely find her on quite a few of those episodes. Plus, she is starting her own, she's co-hosting a new podcast with Dr. Wednesday Martin, who is the author of a book called Untrue, which she talks about here. The new podcast is called True Sex and Wild Love.
Yes.
So it'll be out soon, this week, next week, somewhere in there.
Yes, and Whitney does dive into a lot of self-care and self-love talk, which I think is helpful for all of us to hear, and it was really amazing to chat with her. So stay tuned. Before we get into that interview,
we got a couple of announcements.
As usual, but these ones are fun. Oh, all of them are fun.
Yeah, there's a big one. Our biggest announcement ever here in the intro.
It is. But first, a couple other ones. You might have noticed our old music is back. Woohoo!
Yay! So we've gone back and forth on this, and we've gotten some very strongly worded emails recommending we return to the old music. We've even received bags of flaming dog poop on our doorstep.
I think you're a little bit dramatic.
So don't worry, we do have plans for all you haters of the old music. For the new music, there's some places we're going to use it at some point. So,
but at least for the time being, we're going to stick with our whimsical, fun music that we started with, and it will be, who knows? It's a work in progress. Maybe in the future we'll try again, change it again. We'll see, but it's all fun.
The other thing we wanted to announce is we mentioned a while back with the whole starting a Patreon, our first live video Q&A is going to be next Thursday or July 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you want to be a part of that for as little as $2 a month, you can go and check it out. And honestly, it doesn't charge you till the beginning of the month.
You're not supposed to tell them that.
So you could potentially go and sign up and be a part of this first one. And if it totally sucks and you don't ever want to do it again, you can unsubscribe and you will never get charged.
Yes.
So don't tell anyone I told you that.
Asterisk, not supposed to know that part. The next one is we're going to be at another event on August 10th. And this one is a Club Euphoria foam party in Findlay, Ohio. So we're super excited about that. There'll be some other...
Is it in Findlay or in Lima?
The event thing says Findlay.
Okay. Findlay, Ohio. I should do my research.
They're also right next to each other, I believe.
Okay. Well, either way, it's in Ohio. Go and check it out. The links are in our show notes, as always, at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. We'll be there to foam party it up. with Ray and Dee. We interviewed them a while back.
Yeah, a while
way
back.
So if you want to hear more about them,
they're close. Finlay and Lima are
we
close.
got the map up. We're looking at the map. So go check out the episode with Ray and Dee if you want to hear more about the awesome parties that they throw. Links in the show notes.
Yes, that was an episode from last summer. I don't remember the episode number off the top of my head, but it'll be in the show notes.
All right, it's time.
Yes, okay. Here we go. So Finn and I have been chatting a lot over the last many months about being a little bit more transparent about who we really are. You know, Finn and Emma are pseudonyms, and, you know, moving forward, we do plan to continue using these names, but
just because they're awesome names.
Yeah, we don't want to change that on anybody.
And we don't want to confuse people. And honestly, there's a lot of people who may not have any interest in what we're about to say. So we will let them just believe we're Finn and Emma.
Well, we are.
We are.
We're definitely Finn and Emma. We really don't hide much of our personality at all on this show. You hear who we are, but there is, you know, another part of us, as we have alluded to and talked about. We did quit our jobs over a year ago and traveled in South America for a year.
Yeah. So what we've decided to do is, and actually we have recently been coming out to friends and family, and we've gotten an amazing response. We had, as we mentioned, we were at the World Domination Summit a couple weeks back in Portland, and we told people about this project and our other project, and we got an amazing response.
Yes.
And same with our friends and everybody.
And I think there's also been a lot of the people, or I know there's been a lot of people we interview, especially, including Whitney, I should say, today's interview, that are a lot more public about who they are. And so we feel that it's important for us to, as part of normalizing it, to also be a little bit more out about who we really are.
Yeah. And, you know, the more people that are able to do this, who are willing to do it, is important, I think, to come out. We aren't in a position where we're going to get fired. I hope you're not going to fire me.
And you're not going to fire me?
I don't know.
Some days I think we both want to fire each other.
So, you know, we have the privilege to be able to do this, and not everybody does. So we kind of feel responsible that we should kind of be willing to share who we are. And so basically what we are going to do is, on the About Us page, there are going to be a few links to some websites and maybe another podcast or an Instagram page about basically everything we did last year. And it kind of lifts the veil off of who we really are. And we wanted to share that with people because that project's not going away. It's morphing into something bigger this year.
It's on hiatus at the moment, which you'll see if you look at the links, but it is coming back.
And this show, the Normalizing Non-Monogamy show, has been growing pretty steadily. And we've gotten amazing emails and amazing feedback from people that we've really helped a lot of people figure things out. And we kind of believe that the more transparent we can be, the more we can help more people. And that's really the whole goal of the show, is to help as many people as we can. And if this is something that we can do to do that, we're happy to do it.
Yeah, hopefully it'll just allow people to relate to us a little bit more. And if you're not interested in checking that out, don't even bother. It doesn't matter. We're going to continue being Emma and Finn.
Yeah, our show was doing nothing different here, other than there may be more pictures of us doing things that we do.
Yeah, we'll see as we go.
And we are just going to kind of take it as it is and embrace it. So if you want to support us and go check that out, feel free. If you don't, you can just keep listening, and we're going to do an interview. Yeah,
I have one really quick thing to say. We do have listeners that reach out, and they want to be a guest on the show, but they also are afraid of being, I guess, out about their identity as well. And so we do our best for every show. We allow people to use pseudonyms. We don't post photos. We respect everyone's privacy. So obviously your voice is going to be recorded and your voice is going to be on the podcast, but everything else is completely anonymous. So just keep that in mind if you want to be a guest, but you're worried about your, your privacy. We definitely are concerned about that as well. And we want to make sure that everyone feels safe and is wanting to come on the podcast and not worry about that.
Yeah, and keep reaching out, because we've had some amazing people the last week or two reaching out, and we've got some kick-ass interviews coming up. But again, the more diversity we can show, whether it's your sexual preference or your sexual identity. It doesn't, like, just the more variety, the better.
Yes.
So let's keep it going. We're super excited for the rest of 2019.
Yes, we are. It's only halfway through the year. We're super excited. As a reminder, you can find us. Our website is normalizingnonmonogamy.com. And yeah, you can find the podcasts, the resources, and about us, and contact us all on that website.
So now let's go talk to Whitney, who, by the way, is in the Bahamas at the moment. Well, at the moment of recording. So
yes, she was in the Bahamas.
Put on your...
and we were freezing.
Open your parasol umbrellas and enjoy. We'll
yes.
see everybody on the other side. Well, welcome to the show, Whitney. Thanks for taking some time out of your morning to talk with us. And we've given you a little bit of an intro, but do you mind, for anybody who's not real familiar with you, just telling us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this. These are one of my favorite things to do, so this is perfect. Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a kind of a long life story, even though I'm young, but I guess pertaining to more so relationships and stuff. I was former Miss United States in 2012, and I handed my crown over in 2013. Then I went into fighting to kind of break the mold there, because I wanted to challenge people outside of what the society norm of a pageant queen is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that was a whole other life, right? Like going into fighting and dealing with the emotions and the physical of that. And then during that time, that's when I met my partner, Aubrey Marcus. And we were, fully monogamous for 2 years. We split for about 3 months because he was interested in an unconventional type relationship. And I was like, nope, not going to do it. Can't handle it. I'm out. So I packed my bag and went backpacking for 3 months. And during that time, I had met somebody and realized, oh, wow, I can still be really interested in somebody and have a good time with them and want to explore that, but still very much so be in love with Aubrey. So when I got back, we got back together and started down this very public, open relationship, unconventional relationship path, and have kind of been documenting it and just, spreading the message of this type of relationship and, the challenges that inevitably come with it. And so now we've been together for about 7 years, and it's been one hell of a ride, that's for sure.
Yeah. So when you were on the trip, you sort of fell for somebody else, but you were still obviously in love with Aubrey, and that was sort of the moment where it kind of clicked that you're like, oh, well, this is something I can do.
Yeah, to a certain extent. For me, I think it's one thing, and for a lot of people, I think it's one thing to understand this type of relationship or anything in life logically, and then it's another thing to actually bring it into your emotional being and feel it and understand it and taste it. And so for me, we read a bunch of books and we listened to podcasts, and it was a conversation that we had on a intellectual level, but I couldn't really understand it because it wasn't inside of me yet. So I met this guy who actually happened to be Aubrey's really good friend, which that was, challenging at the time, but it was more so we had like a connection. He was coaching me in Muay Thai. We had like this fun connection where we had some fun together. We hooked up a couple of times, and then it was like, okay, great. This is fun. Now I'm going to go home,
Right.
And so for me, it was just the realization that you can have that and still be in love, super in love with Aubrey, and that it doesn't take anything away from that relationship at all.
Yeah. And so when you got back, I guess, how did the transition go from then having broken up to now you're back together, and how did you start to define maybe the terms of the relationship? Because I know a lot of people go through lots of iterations. They typically start off with a ton of rules, and then by the end of it, there's no rules. And I guess,
right.
How did it look for the two of you?
About like that. Yeah, when we first started off, I think people put so many rules on it because they want to try to control the situation. They want to try to know the unknown. And so we put all of these boundaries and all of these agreements on it, which most of the time, yes, boundaries can create freedom. But at the same time, if you have so many boundaries and agreements placed on the relationship, you're basically setting yourself up for disappointment and you will have to revisit those at some point. And so that was just how it was for us. He was already seeing somebody. He was already dating somebody. So it was, okay, we're going to get back together under this new type of relationship as primary partners. So we were in the full primary partner mode. I'm living with him. I've lived with him. I moved in with him 3 months after I met him, and so it was just that's how it kind of worked. And I met the girl that he was seeing, and we had a lunch and we talked about things, and we didn't know at all what we were doing at the beginning. We had no clue. We weren't surrounded by anyone that was trying this out. We weren't doing anything. We just didn't have the community around us, which makes it way easier.
Yeah. So there's no one modeling any sort of this relationship style for you at all?
No, not really. We had one of our really good friends, Dr. Dan Engel, but he lived across the country. And so there was really nobody in our close vicinity who we could look to for social proof. And that's, one of the things that humans really need is that social proof.
Right.
So we're walking blindly through this path, and it was super challenging. And at first we had a lot of rules. It was maybe you couldn't see somebody on this night, or you couldn't talk to them after this time, or you couldn't, and it was just all of these rules. And finally, as you go through this, you start to realize the more that you relax into it, and the more that you realize, okay, what's truly important here? Is it putting rules on time? Is it putting rules on communication? Or is it really just putting, an agreement that we're in this together, and that I want to be your teammate and I want to support you? And as long as there's mutual respect and all of the relationships are serving each other in the highest way, then we're good.
Right.
Is that kind of what you two found worked best for you, is just to kind of let it be what it is? And
yeah, for sure. And, throughout that time, it was extremely challenging trying to get to that place. But it's also one of the things that taught me more about myself than anything ever has, because it is something that brings up all of your past stuff. It brings up any trauma or, fears, insecurities, and it just heightens it and gives you a big magnifying glass, and you have to look at it. You're forced to look at it. Otherwise you're just sitting there suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the things you learned about yourself, and maybe about your relationship with Aubrey through that process?
So for me, I think, because I do, coaching on this as well, individuals and couples coaching on relationships. It started off as unconventional relationships and making a healthy transition into that. And now it's just relationships across the board, because there's so much to be learned from non-monogamy to monogamy that there is no finger pointing. It's we're in this together, actually. There's so much that we can learn from each other. And so that's kind of how that started. But the one thing that I say is, if you're getting into this type of relationship, an unconventional relationship, the number one commitment needs to be to yourself. To be to yourself, to be interested in what's going to come up for you. Mm-hmm. Because if your number one commitment is to the relationship, it's going to hurt too bad. And so it's let me want this uncomfortable feeling to come up, to know more about myself first and foremost. And so that's kind of the mindset that I had going through it. And, I come from a background of being extremely jealous in relationships, and I was always very alpha, and they couldn't talk to anybody else, and they couldn't see anybody else. And I was the only woman in their world, and that never really worked out for me. It was always, I would wake up one day and I would feel bored, or I would feel like there's something wrong with me, because there's nothing wrong with the person laying next to me, but there's something wrong with me. There's something blocking me, and I didn't know exactly what it was. And that's what came up through this. And so I have, abandonment issues, and I have self-worth issues, and I have self-love issues. And it's all of this brings that up and gives you the perfect opportunity to practice it and hopefully, transcend it. But it's a process, right? It's something that it's not you go to sleep one night and be like, oh, poof, I'm not afraid of you leaving me at all, But so for me, it's really just brought up all of any self-limiting beliefs, any of my fears, any of my insecurities, and has helped me bring those to light. So they're not dictating my life as much.
Yeah. Right. When you have those times that are really difficult, and you feel jealous or feel emotionally unstable, I guess. How do you work through that?
So at first, when we were right in the beginning of this, it was always I would go out and get hammered.
Yeah.
And, I didn't know what I was doing. I was 23 or 4, and I would just call my girls and be like, we got to go. I can't be at home by myself. And then I soon realized that was not the best way to handle it, because you're not only dealing with the emotions that are coming up. Well, you're not dealing with the emotions that are coming up, 1, so they're still going to be there the next time they come up. But 2, you're going to be hungover the next day and you don't feel good. You're not going to be able to fully connect with your partner and understand what's going on. So for me now, what I like to do is sit with it. I think in our society, we have this idea that being uncomfortable, we need to fix it immediately. And that's not necessarily what I think is good. It's like, I'm feeling uncomfortable. That doesn't mean anything needs to be fixed. It's like, let's just get curious about why you're feeling uncomfortable. And for me specifically, I look into my physical body. So am I feeling it in my throat? Is there something that I'm not saying? Am I feeling it in my heart? Am I afraid, self-love? Am I afraid of his love being taken away or whatever? Or I'm not good enough, and then in my solar plexus is like trust. What is making me feel unsafe? It's not necessarily something that he's doing particularly, but it's something that is triggering something within me, and I want to know why. And so it's all about just getting really, really curious about any of the emotions that are coming up and not trying to fix them like that.
Yeah. Has there been a time since you started going down this road with him that the two of you have looked at it and said, this just isn't going to work, and we've got to shut it. We've either got to shut it off completely, or we need to close our relationship back up, or once you went down the path, was it just we're in it for the long haul?
It was both. We're in it for the long haul, and I can't stand you.
Yeah.
So, which I think, and that's the other thing, right? That's how most relationships are, regardless of the container that you're in. Some days it's really easy, and some days you're like, what are we doing? So yeah, there's been multiple times that we had to really look and revisit the relationship and be like, okay, are we on the same page here? Like, are we really working towards the same things? And for us, one of the big things is like having a similar mission and really like working on that together. And that's something that I feel Aubrey and I have such a unique connection when it comes to that. So that really helps keep us, grounded and connected in that way. But there's always times to where where we have to revisit what's going on and let's just take a beat and see what's happening. We've never fully closed the relationship because we're pretty good at working through things. And so I think if something were to come up and it's more about how can we look at what's going on instead of changing the external environment. Like, it's about how do we change what's going on between you and I instead of the, actual relationship. Now, that being said, I think, being in this type of relationship is fluid. I don't think you have to be open forever, or poly forever or monogamous forever. It's like right now, this is what's working for us. So let's figure out how we do that. And then maybe in 6 months or a year or 3 years, it won't, and we'll go back to something else.
It's all part of that ongoing conversation, right?
Yeah, always, right? I mean, it's like communication at its like top. You can never stop.
Yeah, no, I love that you say that, because that's something that we've experienced for us too. Is like, we've had an open relationship essentially from the beginning, but there's been months or even years at a time where we haven't done any. If you were to look at us and ask us what we did that year that was open, nothing.
It was a monogamous year.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that all of a sudden we're done with it. And I think that it's really helpful for people to hear that once you say, okay, well, we're going to try this, it doesn't mean that like it's all day, every day, that's all you do.
Right.
No, it's just trying it on. Like, if this is something that you're interested in, I think make the commitment to yourself to be like, okay, I'm ready to look at my shit, knowing that it's going to be challenging. But it's also like, let's try this on for now and see how it works. And then if you're like, I didn't like it, cool, close the relationship again. There's really no one way one size fits all.
Right.
You know, it's so fluid and it's so in flux. It's just really figuring out how you can create the most optimal relationship specifically for you.
Yeah. And maybe now is not the time. Maybe 10 years you'll want to revisit it and try again.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's no perfect way to do it. And really, when it comes to, like you said, you guys have been, y'all were in a monogamous relationship, but it's like the relationship doesn't need to be open. The only thing that needs to be open is the conversation.
Right.
Like you can, a lot of the times, even just as you guys know, I'm sure, just speaking about your truth and speaking about your desires and maybe attraction to other people, and even having the conversation surrounding open is like a pressure valve.
Yeah. And it gives us the ability to talk about things that most people would be terrified to speak to their partner about. And I think that's something that actually we were just talking about yesterday in terms of even just talking with our friends, like the friends that we've met that we've been able to be open about it with. Just that connection is already
you
deeper.
Immediately have a closer relationship with them than you would anybody else, just because
it's
on the table.
It's so true. That's one of the things that I talk to my clients a lot about is, that's one of the questions that come up a lot. How, if I want to tell my family or I want to tell my friends, how do I do that? And for me, it's like you don't have to, like, don't feel obligated that you have to tell anybody what your relationship is.
Right.
But if you're interested in it, it's realizing that just being able to bring that up to them can actually deepen the relationship and deepen the conversation that you're able to have with those people. And I think for me, it's like, okay, this is who I am. And if you want to know more about me and you want to be closer into my life, I just wanted to share this with you. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to support it. It doesn't mean that you need to understand it.
Right.
But this is just me, bringing you closer in because you're important to me. And I want you to know what my life is kind of like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And when you went through that, because I'm assuming most people in your life know at this point, because you're pretty public about it. Yeah. Did you receive a lot of pushback from family and friends?
Not too much. I've always been the type of person that I do what I want to do. And so I try not to, get too involved in what other people are thinking. But particularly with my father, I grew up with my dad. He's a conservative Texas banker. I'm his only daughter. And so, of course, I'm in an open relationship and it's like completely different. And so for him, I finally just sat down and I basically said what I said to you guys. Like, I just want to bring you closer in and let you know what's going on because we are public about it.
Yeah.
And it's been, I guess that probably had to be 4 years ago now that we had this conversation. And at first it was, oh, you guys have absolutely no commitment to each other. You can do whatever you want. What about STDs? What about this? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, I get it. Like, I understand you have all of these questions. If you want to have an open conversation about it, I'm more than willing to, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to your fears come up about it.
Yeah.
And so it was challenging, but now, like we were talked about earlier, social proof, like now that he sees our relationship has been really good and strong for 7 years now, he's starting to say, oh, interesting. Like, I see what's going on here. Something's starting to click. And for him, it's like, if you're happy, that's all that matters. And same for my friends. My friends at first didn't understand it. But then now 7 years later, they're trying it in their own relationships and giving it a go there and having these deeper conversations. And so it's really, I didn't really get a lot of pushback. It was more just saying they don't understand. And then you give it a little bit of time and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Right. You got something good going on here,
Yeah. Well, they watch your relationship. They see how it unfolds, and they're like, okay, well, this might be hard, but maybe it's worth exploring, at least having the conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was curious, so you and Aubrey were together for a little while before you took a 3-month break, and then you got back together. So you had sort of a baseline of this is what our relationship is like when it's not open. And then you open it. Did you see a shift, just between the two of you from that time when you were closed to the time where you open? And maybe have other people seen that shift and said, okay, well, I see a happier, better Aubrey and Whitney versus what I was seeing before. So this must be doing something for them.
Yeah, I would say there was definitely a shift. I think in the monogamous container, both of us were a little restless, but we were living together. We were talking about marriage. We were talking about babies, and we were just talking about doing exactly what, we were supposed to be doing, basically. And Aubrey actually came from the idea that men naturally had harems. Right. And so that was kind of like his mindset until he read Sex at Dawn, and that kind of switched everything up for him. And so once that changed, he's like, oh, wait, this isn't how it's meant to be. And I don't feel like that's how it's meant to be for me specifically. And so that's how it kind of came up. And so even though I understood it logically, and even though I was restless in the relationship, and even though I was restless in a monogamous relationship my entire life, I had never been, I like I said, a year and a half into it, I would end the relationship because what else are we going to do,
Right.
So then we moved forward, and the sex got better. The communication was more open, the honesty that we had with each other. And so I think inevitably it brings you closer with your spouse if it's done in a healthy way, because it is very, very challenging, but it can really just be such a beautiful and freeing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. We agree.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious that you are both fairly public figures, and what made you decide to bring this also, like share this part of your life with everyone?
I think it was because, well, there's a couple of things. When we first started doing it, we were doing it basically for ourselves. We just wanted to figure it out for us. There was a moment, and during that time I said I didn't want anyone to know. I wanted it to be like under the table, like be very hush hush about it. But Aubrey had gone on a date with somebody, and one of like an acquaintance of ours saw him and was basically like, oh, bro, don't worry. I got you. I'm not going to tell Whitney. And so for him, he was like, oh, I don't want people to think that we're lying. I don't want people to think that you don't know what I'm doing or that I'm cheating or any of this. And so that's when we decided to open up about it and be public about it. And then it kind of just opened up from there of being like, look, I want to be able to give people another option. Right. Because we're born into this world and we're basically given one option, which is monogamy for the rest of your life. And if that doesn't work for you, which most of the time it's incredibly challenging, and it seems to not be working for a lot of people. And so giving somebody another option and being like, hey, it's okay if you want to be monogamous, and it's okay if you want to be open. There's multiple options for you to choose from. But just being able to have that choice instead of feeling like they have to be one way.
Right.
Yeah, and something I kind of picked up on when we've talked about this, and when you've talked about it in the past on other platforms, you always refer to it as an open relationship. And I know a lot of people go and say, well, we're polyamorous, or we're swingers, or we're this, or we're that, and you've sort of gone for this blanket term of just we're open. I guess, do you mind talking a little bit about that and what those different terms mean to you, and why you and Aubrey have gone this path, and I guess how it looks for you today versus 7 years ago?
Yeah, labels I feel like are always constricting regardless. So like we're probably more polyamorous, but it's just easier to say open because some of our relationships are more sexually based. Mm-hmm. Some of our relationships are very deep and have multiple years behind them. So I think it's just easier, honestly, just to say open as opposed to, instead of putting myself in one box or the other, it's just like you said, like a blanket statement of being like, this is an open relationship or an unconventional relationship. There's an infinite possibility throughout any of those, any way that you express that particular label. And, for us, it is more technically polyamorous. I have another boyfriend who I've been with for a year. I'm here in the Bahamas with him now. And he has another partner as well he's been with for 2 years. And so there's have deep relationships that we continue to build and grow.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes it's not always a deep, emotionally connected, multi-year relationship. Sometimes it's, you want to have some fun.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's the exciting part about it, and something that we've sort of come to is that it's, a lot of times if you hear people say like, oh, well, we're swingers, so, there's no getting feelings for people, there's no falling in love. And if you're in the polyamorous side, it's like, well, we don't just hook up with people, but, opening it to yourselves up to be like, well, if I meet somebody, I want to be able to do whatever makes sense with that person. I don't want to miss out on an opportunity because it wasn't going to fit this mold. And I don't know. I think that's something that we've come to the realization for ourselves.
Right. Well, and by labeling yourself as being open, then you invite people to ask you more about that. Like they can ask you and you can explain, this is what it looks like for us, but it may not look like that for everyone else.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that goes for anything in life, exactly. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just really figuring out what works for you personally.
Yeah. What you mentioned that there might have been one or two speed bumps along the way.
Or like 17,000, but yeah.
Or do you mind talking about like maybe some of the bigger ones, or some of the more revolutionary ones that you and Aubrey, or that you were able to work through on your own, like what they were, and how you kind of overcame
or
it.
Even with other partners
too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that kind of like come to mind. I think maybe because this is coming to mind because it's the most recent within the past year is Aubrey dealing with the emotions of me falling in love with somebody else. And that's always the biggest thing. Oh shit, what if she falls in love with somebody else? Or what if he falls in love with somebody else? And that is scary, right? I mean, it does bring up all of those abandonment issues for me and, for him as well.
Yeah.
But it's really like being able to be like, okay, this is where I'm at and this is what I'm feeling. And this is, I want to be able to create a relationship that's optimal and fun and loving for everybody involved, and so how do we do that? And it was, I remember getting to a place we were at Burning Man last year, and that's when I had met my other partner, Ricky, a while before that, but that was like the first time that we had like a full on real connection. And was like, oh wow, this is magical. And I just got to a place where I like could not talk. I was just like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Like I just could not talk. And so finally after that, me and Aubrey sat down and we're like, let's take it down to a zero state and let's have a full, open, honest conversation about things in the past, things, attractions, people who are in the field, what's going on with Ricky. How are you feeling about this? When do you want to see him? Like just lay it all out there and let's see where we can, make this work and see how we can all come together and create a fun relationship for all of us. But it was extremely hard. And it's been, that was a process. It wasn't like we had one conversation and then it was okay. It was a process that he has to, overcome for a while. And then the other big one back in the past was there was a woman who came into our relationship and she was more so on the side of destruction, right? So she wanted to manipulate and lie through the situation. And so that was really hard because I had to give Aubrey the space to at least be able to see that.
Yeah.
And so I had to take a step back and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. And I need to give you the space to explore that so you can know for yourself.
Right, because if you come at it and you're like, she's lying, she's doing this, she's doing that, he's immediately going to get defensive and shut down and say, oh, you just don't like her. You just don't.
Right, which is what happened. At first, it was like, how can you not see what's going on, right? And then it was like, look, if you need to explore this and you need to go down that path to really understand it, then I'm going to give you that space and that grace as much as I can, the best that I can to do so. So you have the answer for yourself because I can't come up with the answer for you. I can't tell you what is going on for sure. It's either him receiving it or, making a different decision. So it's just being able to like give grace and fluidity through the entire process.
Yeah. I think that's, absolutely.
Very well said.
It's like, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, so on our podcast, we like to ask our guests about safety and sexual health and how people approach that in an open relationship. And we like to try to promote that message that it's okay to have that. It's really good to have those conversations. And how do you approach that with your relationship with Aubrey and also with your other relationships and keep yourself, I guess, physically and sexually safe?
Yeah. So I think this is a necessary conversation. I don't think it's a conversation that you can't have,
right?
To be honest.
Exactly.
And it's funny, people, that's one of the things that people like to knock on or pinpoint when you're in an open relationship. Oh, you're just going to get STDs. Oh, what about this? What about that? And it's like, I am way more safe now in this container than I was single. Like, let's be real. Okay. Because I'm not only looking out for my own sexual health, I'm also looking out for Aubrey's sexual health and Ricky's sexual health, and then their partner's sexual health. So we're all in this kind of, relationship together. So sexual health is very, very important. And the other thing is it's an adult conversation. It's not that hard to have. It's you standing up in your power, being like, look, this is really important to me, and it has to be a part of this. So for us, it's pretty black and white. It's if you're with a new partner and you don't know their sexual status, you use a condom. You practice safe sex. If you plan on seeing them multiple times, you can and decide that you don't want to use a condom, and you are confident in what they're also doing, is you get tested and you show your papers. So there isn't any gray area there. We see the papers, we know the test results. Obviously, there's always a little bit of risk involved, because there is trust that comes in. But hopefully, when you're intimate with a partner like that, there's that trust, and you can trust that they're showing you the appropriate papers.
Yeah.
But it's even like for Ricky and I, who've been together for a year. If you are with somebody else, you use a condom. If you didn't use a condom or something happened, you get tested and you show your papers, and that's just it. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. I think it's fun when we talk to somebody who's just very black and white about it, and it's just, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and it's not negotiable. And I think
and it just, honestly, that makes it easier, right? Because you're not wondering like, oh shit, how are they going to handle this conversation, or what about this, or like there is no gray area to try to play around and create stories and assumptions around. It's just like, here's one of the boundaries that really can create freedom for you, is like, this is really important to me, and this is how it goes down.
Yeah.
And there's not another option.
Yeah.
Right.
You want to have sex with me, you're going to get tested,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like there's no other option. And that's really, we firmly agree with you, I guess. And it has to be a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And usually it's a really easy conversation. I think we have so much taboo and stigma around STDs and what does that mean? And that it's like, sometimes it's really not that hard. We create this scenario that's way harder than actually just having the conversation.
Yeah, and oftentimes the stigma around having something is way worse than the actual physical symptoms of that. And I think it's also, once you get into the space, you realize that if you say I have HSV1 or HSV2 or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden nobody's going to talk to you and your sexual life is over. And I think that's another big misunderstanding, is that a lot of times when those conversations happen and that comes up, people are like, great, thank you for telling me. Now we can do this, this, and this to help increase our safety, decrease our risk, and then things go on.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. That's that open communication again. It's just keeping all of the conversations as open as possible.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I was curious. So one thing we also like to kind of touch on is there can be some very serious conversations along the way, but we've also found there's some pretty funny things or some sort of bloopers, whether they were sexual or just miscommunications, things that have happened along the way that you look back on and they're just, you laugh at them. And I was curious, is there something that has happened to you or because of you that you look back now and it's just a funny story that you like to share?
No, I mean, it's honestly such a good question, and I love it. I think, like, I know there's some damn bloopers because now I'm best friends with the girl that he started dating.
Mm-hmm. Okay, back at the very beginning.
At the very beginning. So when we first met, we were like, we don't really want to hang out with each other. I don't really like you. But now we're full best friends. And, like, we hang out all the time. She's, like, my homegirl.
Are they still dating?
No, they've been kind of, like, on and off. And then as of recently, they decided they're not still dating. But even, like, through that, she reaches out to me for, like, relationship help with them, right? Because I care about them as partners, you know, and I want the best for them because she's my best friend and he's my partner. And so, like, I want them to feel love. And so how can I support that? And so I know there's just been, like, some funny stuff that had to happen with her. I don't know if I can give you an answer on this one.
No, I mean, that's okay. Cause I think maybe you touched on something there that is also important to talk about is your relationship or relationships with metamors and how you handle those. Cause it sounds like you went from, like, ooh, don't talk to me to, hey, we're best friends. And that has now transcended, you know, Aubrey's relationship with her. Mm-hmm. And so now there's probably, I mean, that's a whole different story. Now they're not together, but you two are basically together. And now he's got to see his essentially his ex-girlfriend hanging out with his fiancé. And I think that can mess with somebody's head, right?
Yeah, you would think so, but I feel like we've been in this for so long that it doesn't. Like, he understands our relationship, and he still loves her very much. It's just like they needed to take the sexual component out of the relationship for a while, and so. Yeah, I think what the deal was because we were constantly having those deep conversations with each other and having those really uncomfortable conversations with each other that we couldn't sweep anything under the rug. And so that really brought us closer. And then at first, like you said, there was a lot of resistance. We didn't want to hang out. We didn't want to talk about anything. Let's just pretend like each other aren't there. But then we realized the more that we could be collaborative through this journey, the easier it was. And then probably at, like, year 3 or so is when we're like, wow, we actually really like each other. And so, like I said, I go to her for support and she comes to me for support. And I think it's because we removed all of those layers that kind of prevent you from connecting with somebody throughout the entire relationship. And that's the other thing that I've learned through Open, honestly, is I always had a really hard time connecting with women. I was always extremely competitive growing up. I never really had any girlfriends. And then I started we ventured into this open relationship, and it taught me that I could be close with women and that it was okay and that it was a safe place. And now being able to remove those layers and understand it a bit more allowed me, now I have the closest, most awesome group of really, really strong female bonds. And that is something that I'm so incredibly grateful for because it's something that nourishes me, and I couldn't imagine not having them in my life. And I truly believe it's because I started working on myself through this unconventional relationship.
Right. And just started to try to remove some of that jealousy and competition.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's something that you've...
Oh, yes, I can relate to that a lot too. I mean, like, I have many friends that are women as well, but my closest ones know a lot more about me than the more, I guess, not as close ones. I don't know how to phrase that, but yeah.
I think that's normal and true for everybody, right? We have our super close friend circle that knows absolutely everything, and then we have a little bit wider our acquaintances that maybe we hang out with every once in a while, and then it goes wider and wider and wider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you were starting to dive into this and it was becoming a reality that this is how it was going to be, did you start searching out resources that were looking for information, right? You talked about there was sort of an information gap at the beginning. And
you mentioned Sex at Dawn.
You mentioned Sex at Dawn. Yeah. Were there other resources that you found along the way that were very helpful for you?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it was one of the things that I do like to talk about when it comes to that is surrounding yourself with people who will support you through the challenging times and won't basically put your partner down or put your relationship down. Because a lot of the times in society today, unfortunately, we tend to bond over things that we don't like, over negativity. And so finding people who play the opposite side of that is like, I see your feelings are here, but why don't you think of it this way and give you a different perspective, was incredibly beneficial for me. And we had one couple close to us who I reached out to multiple times just to kind of like get that other side of the perspective, because I knew I could go to my girlfriends earlier on and we could sit there and gossip and talk shit and bond over that, and everything that's not good. But then I could go to them and be like, okay, like give me the opposite side of this. So at least I have both sides of the spectrum so I can make my own decision on what feels right. But yeah, I think having resources is huge. And so Sex at Dawn was a big book for us. The Ethical Slut is always a great book. The Mastery of Love. It's not, pinpointed on unconventional relationships, but I feel like the idea behind it is huge. More Than Two people really like. Now I think, I'm coming out with a podcast with Dr. Wednesday Martin, who wrote the book Untrue. Mm-hmm. That was a huge book for me to read, one of my favorite books, and I highly, highly recommend that.
We're actually in the middle of reading that right now, and it's very good.
Because of the interview we saw on Aubrey's show with you and her. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I remember reading that book just like, thank God you wrote this.
Well, and it was something that you said early on in this, that, that book is loosely about how women are not always the unfaithful ones, but how women are also the percentage of women who are unfaithful in relationships is roughly equal to men, and it's just not ever really publicized in that sense. And you talked about early on, like you would date somebody for a year or a year and a half, and then you'd kind of get restless, and then you'd move on because what else am I going to do? It doesn't sound like you necessarily had the I cheated on everybody I was with, but you sort of
no. I cheated on everybody I was with.
Okay, well, I guess I was wrong then.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I and that's something that I honestly want to talk about, because there is such a stigma around people and infidelity and cheating, and it's kind of drives me crazy, because so many people have, yes, been affected by it, and I know it's really challenging and it's hard. I get that. And I don't want to take that away from anybody, because I've also been cheated on, so I understand. But I feel like it's challenging. What drives me crazy is people that point fingers at the other person, like you are so horrible that you cheated on somebody else. When you look at the statistics, and it's just mind blowing how many people are really having an issue with monogamy. Right. And I think it comes down to that. It doesn't come down to the morals or the beliefs of the individual. It comes down to what's the bigger issue here? The bigger issue is that monogamy seems to be a really tight shoe for a lot of people. And so that's why for me, it's yes, I've cheated on basically everyone that I've ever been with. And I don't think that there is a problem with that. I feel like you need to go and look at why you're doing it, because it's not your partner. I don't blame any of my partners for it. I had my own jealousy and, approval and validation. And I had all of these things coming up in myself that I needed to look at and understand why I was searching out other people. And so that's why I feel like getting into an open relationship was okay, here's your opportunity to really figure out why.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, because we've had a handful of guests who they've gotten into this strictly because one or the other person cheated on somebody else. And actually the two that we've had out so far, it was both the women had an infidelity and it wound up opening up their relationship, and now they're either polyamorous or they're swinging or they're open. And I think it's a story that we really love to tell, because rather than it just being the end of the relationship, it's the beginning of something new for them.
Yeah, it can be an expansion, if you allow it to be, understanding that this is something very, 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 very common that happens and have the understanding that, okay, this can open up our communication with each other, and this can be actually an expansion of our relationship. It doesn't mean that our relationship has to end. It doesn't mean the family has to break up. It doesn't mean that the person doesn't love you more than anybody else in the world at all.
Exactly.
This can be the moment to where it's like, okay, let's really sit down and talk with each other here. Like, let's be real from heart to heart, not the masks that we've put on over the years, but like what's really going on inside of ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I we're kind of coming up on the end here, and I'm hoping that maybe at some point in the future we could do this again, or maybe do like a round table with you and a few other people, and maybe just talk about that topic itself, because I think it's such a big one.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is for sure.
But I have a really quick question.
Okay.
Back, you said you took a 3-month break after your 2 years with Aubrey, and you went backpacking. Where did you go?
Well, it started off it was supposed to be a 1-month trip. And then I was like, screw it, I'm not coming back. Right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Or after a breakup, my boyfriend wants to be with other people type of deal.
Right. I got to go get away from all that.
Right. Exactly. So I started off in Peru, and I did my first Wachuma ceremony down there. So I was there for 7 nights, and then kind of went to the Sacred Valley, checked it out there. Then I just looked to see where the furthest direct flight out of Lima was, and it landed in Madrid. So I landed in Madrid, and I did Madrid and Barcelona. And then I went to Thailand to train Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, because I'm big into martial arts.
Yeah.
And I did that for an entire month. Then I met some really close friends of mine who are still friends of mine to this day. I met them at the gym, and they were going to Bali and said, hey, do you want to come to Bali with us? Okay. Yeah. So I went to Bali for a couple weeks. And then I was supposed to go to South Africa, but I ended up getting dengue fever in Bali. So I had to go back to the States, and that kind of like ended the trip. But it was the most amazing trip I've ever done. And it was the first time that I traveled completely by myself. Just was like open to any experience that came along the way. I didn't know exactly where I was going to go. And I just had my one backpack with me. And it was, even though, going through that breakup and knowing the heartache that I was really feeling, I would never change anything, because I would have never had that experience. And I feel like being able to travel by myself and meet those people and have those experiences changed my life for the better.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll do it again?
Oh, yeah. I travel by myself. Ever since then, I have to travel by myself at least once or twice a year. Okay. Like, just take a week, go somewhere. Usually I've never been. I usually don't speak the language, and just go. And for me, that's just such medicine to just be a little bit uncomfortable and try new things and see new people. And yeah, that's one of the big things. And I think, honestly, for women, I think that's a huge tool that we can use to just cultivate our own power and our own voice, and really like start to open up to the fullest potential of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's a night somewhere by yourself, or maybe it's a weekend, or maybe it's a 3-month trip like I did, it's kind of whatever feels right to you.
Yeah. Yeah. We're fellow travelers. We love traveling. So I just had to ask that question. It's such a life-changing experience to get out and see other cultures. And like you said, be put in uncomfortable situations and have to figure them out and be okay with that uncomfortability.
Right. So. Right. Mm-hmm. And just like, you have stories that bring back with you, right? At the end of the day, you have funny stories. You can relate with more people. It's just,
exactly.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And it makes you way more empathetic. At home, when you see, somebody from another country struggling in your country to order food at the restaurant, or do things, and you're much more willing to be like, let me help you, rather than just like, come on, man, I'm trying to get through my day here.
Right. You're holding up the Starbucks line.
Exactly. But you've been in their shoes many times, so yes. It definitely makes you think twice and want to help.
So
them.
true.
Yeah.
Well, before we let you go, is there anything else that you wanted to get out into the world? That you have your own megaphone, but if there's something that you wanted to impart upon our listeners before you're off, go for it.
Yeah, I think I just want to talk about a little bit about the podcast that I'm doing with Dr. Wednesday Martin. It's called True Sex and Wild Love, and we already have a bunch of episodes in the tank, but we haven't released yet. And that's all about, sex, love, relationships, women's empowerment, anyone that's kind of like pushing the boundaries. We have a lot of great guests coming out on that. And then also, I'm doing the individuals and couples coaching. So if anyone's interested in kind of diving further into that, and like I said, my goal is to help people create whatever their optimal relationship is outside of everyone else's.
Okay.
And you can just email me. You can go on Instagram, Wit in Love, or email me, Whitney in, just the letter N, LOVE, @gmail.com.
All right. Well, we'll make sure we put those in the show notes.
Yeah. And do you have an idea of when the podcast might launch?
Should be within a month, I'm hoping.
Okay.
We're working on the podcast cover art right now. So
cool.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you again for your time, and enjoy the Bahamas. And if Ricky wants to take us to the Bahamas, just let him know. We're always available.
I'll let him know.
And have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You guys too.
Welcome back, Jenny.
What?
That's not your real name.
I'm just making up names.
I'm just making up fake real names for you now. How'd I do?
I don't know. I was trying to think of one to call you, but I don't even.
Kevin. Ross.
That was even better. Ross.
Why do I do this to myself?
Chandler.
Why do I do this? Well, anyway. Thank you, Whitney, for taking the time out of your vacation to sit with us and chat a little bit and share a lot of the stuff you did. It was pretty vulnerable, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And hopefully people have found it useful.
Yeah. I hope so. This is a really fun episode to do. So, and actually all of them are, by the way.
You sound like it. You sound like me over there.
I know.
Robo-Finn.
But we wanted to mention a really quick resource. The one we wanted to mention is stdcheck.com. If you are someone who doesn't like to talk to your doctor about trying to get STI panels, this can be an awkward conversation. The website,
as you'll hear next week in our interview.
Yes, so, it can.
If you're not convinced now, you'll be convinced then.
But go to stdcheck.com and you can follow the links on our resources page. This does support the show, so we strongly encourage you to go to the links on our resources page to go to the site.
It saves $10.
And it also saves $10. Exactly.
However, if you don't have the money to do that and you live in one of the cities where freestdcheck.org operates,
yes,
check them out, because the whole point here isn't to make money, it's to get you tested and your partners tested and be safer.
Yes.
So,
and spread the word.
Spread the word. Don't spread anything else.
Nice. I wasn't even planning for that.
I was.
Anyway, next week we have another interview. Surprise, surprise. This one is going to be with Susie and Jay.
Yes, awesome people. Fairly new, but also quite experienced in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, they've had a lot of...
Maybe that's the best way to say
Yeah, I'd say that. It's a positive thing. They've had a lot of...
This was not a negative thing, Jay and Susie. So, anyway, thank you for listening to us ramble. Thanks for all your support, and we look forward to next week and everything else we've got going on.
Yes, and we're excited. Oh, really quick, if you missed at the top of the show, our Patreon date for the first live Q&A is going to be Thursday, July 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern. So check it out.
We'll see you there.
We'll see everyone there, hopefully.
We expect to see you there.
And reach out to us. We really love to hear from everyone.
We'll see you there.
Finn's going to shut me up now.
I've never been able to in the past.
What? You're the one talking a lot. Okay, bye everyone.